Good evening. Welcome to the 2026 election hustings for the St Saviour Deputies. I'm Kathy Keir and I'm taking us through the proceedings this evening. We have until 9 o'clock, so I hope everyone has some questions ready for the candidates. We've left some paper and pens just near the entry, so if you'd rather not ask it yourself, then you're welcome to pass a piece of paper up to me and I can ask your question, but it'd be nice if you could ask it in person. It's more interesting apart from anything else. Please include your name on the piece of paper, and when you do ask a question, the JEP is here and they'd really like your full name so that if they use your question in their article, they'll know who you are. So just before we start, a bit of housekeeping. Can you please make sure your phones are on airplane mode, because otherwise if you get a text, it interferes with the tech. We're not expecting a fire alarm, so if there is one, then the exits are there, and the muster station is over there. And the loos are just outside. I expect you spotted them as you came in. To make you aware, this event is being live streamed to the vote.je YouTube channel. So for those of us joining online, welcome. You can access live captions by pressing the button at the bottom of your screen. A recording will be available on YouTube after tonight, so if you know someone who couldn't make it tonight, they can have a look at YouTube afterwards. So, your candidates for the 4 deputy seats in alphabetical order, from my right, your left, are Louise Dublé, Independent, Malcolm Ferry, Independent, Raluca Kovac, Reform Jersey, Chris Leck, Independent, and Robert Parker, Independent. Tonight, the candidates have agreed that they'll each make an opening speech, and then they'll have 2 minutes to answer each of your questions. They'll answer your questions in alphabetical order, with each taking it in turn to answer first. So, let's get started with the speeches. Louise Dublé first.
I get the privilege of making sure the microphone is working. Can everybody hear me okay at the back? Okay, great. Good evening, everybody. My name is Louise Dublé. I'm one of your current St Saviour deputies. I've been serving the parish for nearly 12 years now. And when I first became a deputy, I was a primary school teacher, and I'm often asked, why did I want to move from teaching very young children into being a States member? And the answer that I often give is a feeling of frustration, which I know is shared by many of you, actually, that I've been speaking to on the doorstep. A frustration that the children in the class that I had at the time, I felt that those in leadership positions didn't understand what life was really like for those children, didn't understand what life was like for their families. And I channeled that frustration into standing for election. And every action that I take, I remember those children that I used to teach, and I try to make good decisions in their best interests. I've always been someone who has tried to make a difference in the work that I have done, teaching and now as a States member. And I learned a lot about families and about the community when I was a teacher. And I've learned even more in the 12 years that I've been your deputy. I have always strived to be a voice for children. I've always strived to stand up for people who are being treated unfairly, and to take real action and to make a difference in the lives of the people that I represent. I genuinely love my island, I love my community, and that compassion that I feel for the people around me is something that I put into the work that I do. If you look on your seats, you can see the manifesto that I have made, and on the second page there you can see some of the achievements. Some of the achievements that I have made standing alone as an independent States member and other achievements that I have made in conjunction with other States members, because that's something that is very important to me, is that working across the Assembly with States members who have different political views to get things done, and I have a track record of doing that very successfully. I have tenacity, and I've been told that I'm somebody who doesn't give up when I think something needs to change, and the people around me, my parishioners, are telling me that that's what they need. I will not give up until I make some change for my parishioners. And I have the experience now in various leadership roles across the Assembly, both in government and chairing scrutiny panels, that I can continue to take that effective action and use my integrity and my compassion to represent you in the States Assembly. So please have a look at the manifesto that's on your chairs. Much of the work that I would like to do is a continuation of the work that I have currently been doing in the Assembly. So I very much hope you will consider me for one of your votes for deputy. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Malcolm Ferry.
Thank you. I'm going to stand up just to give the camera operator a bit of exercise, if nothing else. So, good evening. My name is Malcolm Ferry, and I got elected in 2022. What I would like to say is it's so nice to have a working sound system in this parish hall. So whoever gets elected as Conatar, please make that your priority, because whenever we attend parish meetings, you realise what a decent sound system difference it makes. So let me just give you a whistle-stop tour of my career. I started my career in the finance industry, where I advised people on pensions, investments and savings. And then after that, I worked for a period of 11 years at the Department of Social Security, where I had responsibilities for fraud and compliance. After that, I worked for another period of 11 years at the Citizens Advice Bureau, or Citizens Advice Jersey as it's now known. And that was offering advice and guidance to people from all walks of life. And what that work taught me was how many problems can be solved and how very practical solutions can be put in place. People quite often say to me, Malcolm, is this your second or third term in the Assembly? And I say, no, it's the first. But I think the reason people think I've been in longer is when I was at Citizens Advice, I was very much involved in the political sphere. And I fed into scrutiny panels and I made comment about how things could be improved in Jersey. And that's what I've tried to do since I've been elected. So in 2022, I got elected, which I must say was one of the best days of my life. The feeling of euphoria you get knowing that people have put their trust in you is quite something else. And I think that's why so many people come back to politics sometimes after a period of being away. Because giving back to the community also gives something to yourself, something really, really special. So I was lucky enough to get onto the government side in the first iteration of government in the last Assembly. And I was Assistant Minister for Social Security, where I had responsibilities for the charity sector. I was also an Assistant Minister for Health, where I had responsibilities for adult social care. Obviously, halfway through the electoral term, the old government had a vote of no confidence, or the old Chief Minister had a vote of no confidence, and I was invited to stay on government, where I have responsibilities for children and families and for sustainable economic development. I'm also the Vice Chair of the State's Employment Board. So some of the changes that have happened over the last 2 years, many of which have been really positive changes for the island, I've been at the forefront of some of those changes with the work that I've done. So please consider me for one of your votes on June the 7th so that I can continue some of that great work. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. Now, Luca Kovac.
Thank you, everyone. Serving St. Saviour since 2022 has been one of the greatest honors of my life. I am British Romanian, and Jersey has been my home for over 17 years. My husband and I raised our 2 daughters here in the parish while running our family hospitality business in Howard Davis Park. So when people talk about the pressure of bills, housing, staffing, childcare, or simply trying to build a good life in Jersey, I understand it not from just a briefing, but from lived experience. And like many of you, I love this island deeply. But I also know many islanders find it very difficult and feel worried about the future. Too many families are working harder than ever and still struggling to get ahead. Young people wonder if they will ever be able to afford a home here. Pensioners worry about the rising costs. Businesses are fighting just to stay afloat. People want practical solutions and not political theater. They want representatives who listen, work hard, and deliver. That has been my focus from day one. During this term, I secured additional paid leave for parents of premature and sick newborn babies, expanding funding for wound dressings and medical hosiery, pushed forward social housing rent reform review, supported grants for islanders competing off-island, and championed women's health, youth services, inclusion, and family support, and more. At the parish level, I have worked on safer routes to school, traffic calming, community spaces, youth activities, parking concerns, and local events, while staying accessible through meetings, drop-ins, and direct support for parishioners. Alongside my Reformed Jersey colleagues, we have already started turning the tide by delivering free GP for children, cheaper bus fares for young people, stronger renters' rights, pension plus support expanded, free childcare for 2 to 3 years old, and more. But there is much more to do. If re-elected, I will continue fighting to reduce the cost of living, improve access to housing and healthcare, support families and carers, strengthen our economy, improve infrastructure, and ensure government spends your money responsibly. I believe Jersey can be a place where hard work is rewarded, where young people can build a future, where businesses can grow, and where communities feel supported. I bring experience from business, project management, finance, public service, and community work, but most importantly, determination, compassion, and strong work ethic. I received the Public Services Community Champion Award 2021 for my community work and the Commonwealth's New Parliamentarian of the Year Award 2024 for my parliamentary work, good governance, and international representation of Jersey. I have never been afraid to speak up, ask difficult questions, or challenge decisions when I believe islanders deserved better. So if you want a deputy who listens, acts, and delivers practical results for both St. Saviour and Jersey, I would be honored to have your support on the 7th of June. Please vote Raluca Kovac and Reform Jersey. Together we can turn the tide for Jersey. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Chris Leck.
Good evening. I'm Chris Leck. I live in St Saviour, where my children were educated, and as the JP put it, I'm a newcomer to the role of deputy, but not a newcomer to dealing with hefty financial concerns like the states of Jersey, with net assets of 8.9 billion and annual expenditure of 1.2 billion. I spent over 20 years working with businesses of this size and larger as a Deloitte audit partner. For 8 years, I ran the local office here with Greg Branch. Clients included Jersey Electricity, Jersey Post, and the airport. As projects director in the Treasury Department, I looked at reducing expenditure of states-owned property, health, by introducing more care into the community, procurement, by consolidating expenditure. For 10 years, I was treasurer of the Jersey Employment Trust, a magnificent charity which helps people with disabilities and long-term health conditions to get employment. Now, when I was standing for deputy and made the announcement, social media had a field day. That's all we need, another boring accountant. Well, you know what? You do. According to the latest accounts, annual government expenditure over the last 4 years has grown from £903 million to £1.2 billion, an increase of 33%. Now, some steps have been taken to reduce costs, fewer consultants and a recruitment freeze, but has enough been done? Candidates are promising improvements for health, infrastructure, affordable housing, education, recreational facilities. In addition, in the parish, we need roads to be safer in good repair, allotments for flat holders, more active community centres. But we have to get a grip on expenditure, adopting a business-like approach. What are we spending money on? Why are we spending it? Can we spend it on something better? We've got to grasp the nettle. Cost of living. Why haven't we got Lidl, Aldi, range stores in Jersey? High freight costs, planning and licensing issues, too much regulation and bureaucracy. Existing businesses have the same complaints. We need to make it more attractive for the young to stay, subsidise further education, look at tax incentives and more affordable houses rather than apartments. But wait, us boring accountants have a bright side. To paraphrase Mr. McCorber, happiness comes if income exceeds expenditure. We must grow the economy, supporting local and new businesses by enhancing vocational training and apprenticeships, improving transport links, buying local for government work. Where's the vision for growth? We have Jersey Finance and Digital Jersey. Where's AI Jersey? In summary, we need a strong, competent, efficient government that's able and not afraid to cut public expenditure, has the skills to grow the economy, and tackles the cost of living head on.
Thank you, Chris. Now, Robert Parker.
Good evening. I'm another boring accountant. Basically, I started my career at Coopers & Lybrand in Bristol. I went on to work for a multinational, American multinational. I ended up basically being manager of international financial control for Paramount Pictures. And then I came back to the island when I was 27, having traveled many areas around the world. At 28, I was managing director of the Hotel de France, which is a company I basically, as a family business, I now own. I've been involved in developing the Lido Medical Center, basically Ayush Health House, the joint venture with Dandara, and I've got, obviously, a long business experience. I've been involved with public accounts. I've been on the airport advisory board, tourism board, and I've been on public accounts. On the side, I think Chris has probably stolen most of my thunder about the states of Jersey's accounts at the moment, because they are atrocious. But on the cost of living, for instance, we basically bring in oils for Ayush. On those, the cost of bringing them in from England to Jersey was over 2 times the cost of bringing them from India to England. And the crazy thing is that 4 years ago, it was pretty similar. So the question is, what is the supply chain? Where are the costs? And how do we look into that in regarding benchmarking and working out where we are failing in relation to the cost of living? I won't go into all the areas about the cost of living. You've got the issues like planning. Planning and the way they basically deal with things, I think add at least probably 10% to the cost of construction on this island. We have other areas. Our computer systems are not that great. They don't talk together. The systems in our hospital are not good. We need to combine with Guernsey where we can save millions by ending up with one license between the islands rather than one license for each island. We also then have issues on the other side, which is tax. We ended up with 0.10 and we brought in 20 means 20. For Middle Jersey, what does that mean? It means that where you paid, you ended up paying tax after you got to your allowances. After that, it was 20%. Now we go into marginal rate, 26%. We now have 1.95% of long-term care at 1.95. So you add that lot together, and it's just under up to nearly 27.95. It's nearly a 40% increase once you get above the basically allowance. It is not surprising that Middle Jersey feels squeezed. Also on the tax front, I'm basically a locally owned company. We pay 20% on any distribution. Non-local companies pay 0. We need to change. Thank you.
Thank you to all the candidates. Now it's time to hand it over to you for some questions. A microphone will be brought to you to ask your question, and please hand it back to the helper once you've asked your question. Residents of the parish will have priority, and please tell us your full name. And when phrasing your question, please make sure that every candidate can answer it. If we have time, I will come back to people to let them ask a second question, but I'm going to give the chance to as many people as possible. So, and remember to hold the mic close when you speak into it. So I think the first person who put their hand up is the guy in the stripy shirt. Then we'll go to the lady with the blue, and then to the lady with the white and black.
Thank you. David Crocker and I live just at Jardin Pommier, around the corner. Got to say, guys, a little disappointed. Nobody really mentioned the community, the actual parish that we live in. It's all big picture stuff, and that's my question to you. What are you actually aiming to do for the parish, or do you just see yourself gliding into the global picture of the States Assembly and just leaving the parish to wither and die until the next 4 years comes around, and then we see you again with your smiling faces and rosettes?
So Louise first.
Thank you for the question, Dave. Yes, so in terms of parish issues, the first thing I do want to say is that, yes, we are a parish, but we are also part of an island community. And sometimes in Jersey, the setup that we have politically separates us from other parishes. But actually, once we get into that assembly, we are in there working for the parish and working for the people who have voted for us and thinking about the things that we have heard on the doorstep and the things that our parishioners want and taking that forwards with those big decisions. And that is something it's just part of the job that we do. But I take your point, Dave, about the parish issues. I'll give you an example. So I've spoken a lot about children and families, which is one of my main areas of focus. At a parish level, what that looks like, for example, this week I was at Grasset Park with a group of families there because they are having some difficulties with the administration of their common areas. The play equipment has been deemed to be not fit for the children to use, and overnight there was fencing put up around the play area so that the children weren't supposed to play on there. So I've been helping those families. I've been liaising with Andium Homes, with the new management agency that's taking over, and got some action for them on taking away the barriers which were making the play areas really dangerous, more dangerous than the play areas were themselves, because the children were just going under the barriers. So that's the kind of community level work that I do. In terms of families, I've helped on other estates in St Saviour, I've helped families to get access to play spaces and green spaces near their estate by helping them to liaise with the school next door. So all of that kind of quiet work that often isn't seen, that is going on as well. And I know that the current deputies, we do that to varying degrees, because I think this is a role that people do in different ways. Some people choose to take more of a kind of academic approach and do the scrutiny or work in government. Some people choose to do more of the community things. And I'll stop there.
Malcolm.
Thank you, Dave. That's a great question. And I think, how do you measure a parish deputy? I measure a parish deputy by how often they turn up at the parish hall for the parish meetings. I come to every parish meeting. I think I've missed 2 in the 4 years that I've been here. I live in the parish. I have done for 30 years. I am passionate about the parish. I sit on the accounts committee, and one of the benefits of sitting on the accounts committee is when we decide what the rate is going to be, the parish rate, I can have influence on that. And I'll tell you now that the last parish accounts committee that I sat on, the original iteration of the accounts, the rate was going to be higher than it finally turned out to be. And the reason that it was revised down a little bit is because I put forward a proposition in that little group to say, please can we make this a more sensible increase? And so the parish secretary took that away and sharpened his pencil and found a way that we could bring that down. So there are lots of things that we should be doing in this parish that we can do better. We've got the parcel of land behind the parish hall, and it's up there at the back for people to see. That's great. We've also got Field 500 across the road, a fantastic piece of land that anyone who saw last Liberation Day, we had a party down there, a big open day. Let's have some allotments down there. Let's change the access so that you can come in from Rectory Lane and use that car park. It's a great community space that we're just not maximising. A marquee goes up there. The amount of people who came down on Liberation Day and said, I didn't even know this existed. So there are lots of things that we can do in the parish. As myself, we have parish surgeries, which I've attended at Georgetown, where we just make ourselves available and we just open ourselves up to hear what the concerns are of the parishioners. I'm always conscious, The people that put me where I am now is all of you here tonight, and obviously a lot more people. And we owe them that debt by at least serving the parish who voted us in the first place. Thank you for that great question.
Thank you. Naraluka.
Thank you, Dave. I think as a parish representative, it's really important the community work for two aspects, both of bringing the community together and creating the spaces where that can happen. And unfortunately, although we are the second most populous parish and we have most of the schools here, we have much less to do than more the other parishes, not even compared to St. Helier. And I've been working alongside the schools to open spaces where we can access those school grounds in different aspects for young people. I've worked on creating partnerships, for example, with Haute Lyon and bilateral treaties with schools in Romania and France, from which we did a change of experiences. We brought the people from there here, and the Haute Lyon people went there to have a different experience. I've worked with my deputy colleagues and the constable to support the plan of the community center that is proposed, and I think that's a great initiative which needs to continue, whoever will be the next constable. And talking about working with the deputies from the parish, I think that's really important, no matter from what political background you come, to get along well and work together for the parish and not against each other. And I think we did well so far, and hopefully that will continue. On other aspects of community, when we talk about road safety, improved sustainability, cycling routes to school, I've been involved on all those together with the infrastructure and the constable, and have managed to reduce speed limits on Rue de Prez, working together, and different yellow lines that improve safety parking or visibility on accessing for Wellington Road and near St. Saviour School. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Leck.
Thanks. What to say? Malcolm, I thought you spoke brilliantly there. I'd mentioned in my speech about allotments. That was something that was raised at discussions that I had as we were going around. More active communities. Can anybody tell me how many activities were held this week in this town hall? Anybody know? Yeah, one, and that's tonight's meeting. I mean, come on. You must be able to get the community going. There must be a vision that makes us want to meet together. I went round Langtree Gardens. They have the Breton Hall. Fantastic. Talk to the pensioners who are living there. That hall is used virtually every day. They're playing canasta, bridge, chess, all sorts of things. There's a real community feel up there. So let's have some more of that. The other thing which I thought was interesting was when you asked that question, the only other activity was put down as being having coffee after the church service at 9:45. Well, at least this weekend, and I hope you'll all attend at 12 o'clock on Saturday, we're organising, or the church is organising, the fete, and Mary and I will be serving you teas and coffees. Parish meetings, yes, very important. Why are they always held here? Can't they be held in Georgetown? Can't they be held at St. Luke's Church? Often other people I've been speaking to around the parish would say they feel a little bit left out. They feel that all the activity happens around this area of St. Saviour, which is right at the bottom end, and nothing else is going on. Another thing, why on earth did planning turn down the paddle courts in Farmers Field with Jim Pershard owns? I know it's not quite in our parish, but believe you me, we have no activities, do we? We have no sports centres north of FB Fields and north of the Caesarean. Why is that? You know, that would have been a great opportunity. The cricket there in the summer last year was fantastic. If some of the kids could have been up there playing paddle, that would have been fantastic. Thanks.
Thank you. Now, Robert Parker.
Dave, a very interesting question. I do something for the parish every year. I pay my rates. As probably one of the largest ratepayers in the parish, it's rather important to probably increase those considerably over the years. In relation to what I can do for the parish, I'm probably considered, rather than a hotelier, as a property developer and mainly in property. I've also been involved in legal cases and many other aspects related to planning and other things, to which I hope with my expertise I can help in making things happen in this parish. I can make things happen. That is what I hope to be able to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we move on to our next question, which is the lady in the blue top.
Hi, I'm Vicky Trehorrell. I live and work in this parish. You actually touched on the first part of my question, so thank you for that, because it's given me scope for the next bit. So with the island being in such financial straits at the moment, which is affecting every person within this parish, it's interesting that some of you have spoken about ways to manage that financial pressures for the parishioners, and you know, things both at the Senators' Hustings and here have been mentioned about things like Lidl, but we do have the most expensive shipping island in the world, and in addition to that, we don't have the infrastructure to support that, and we will cost jobs locally, and small businesses will struggle. So my question around that is, how do you propose, without bringing in something that's going to pose further, further straits on parishioners, how do you propose to start managing the cost of living for your parishioners so that they can afford to eat and pay their rent and pay their bills? Let's put things like buying houses aside. How are you going to support parishioners to live, particularly pensioners who currently are not surviving very well, and I've given up all hope of there even being a pension by the time I get there. So that is my question.
Okay, thank you for the question. Malcolm Ferry will be answering first this time.
Thank you, Vicky. Really interesting question. Let me start with the last part of your question first, about pensions. We have a pension fund, the Social Security Pension Fund, which has got £2.7 billion in it. You know, it's got 7 years' worth of spend. In the last year, it's grown from 2.5 billion to 2.7 billion. So I can give you the best assurance that I can that there will certainly be a pension for you when your time comes. So how do we alleviate the cost of living? You know, this is the question which is on everyone's lips at the moment. The simplest way to alleviate the cost of living pressures are to continue to grow the economy. And the way we continue to grow the economy is move out the way of business and let it get on with what it needs to do. That's the first thing. I think the second thing that we need to consider is, how do we make it cheaper to shop in Jersey? You mentioned a budget supermarket. There are some French operators who would love to come over to Jersey and open up a supermarket in Jersey. Some of the obstacles at the moment have been planning. You know, let's get past those obstacles and give people better choice with still good quality food from a different direction. Let's use the southern route that we are more. There's some great opportunities on the southern route, and we always look to England. We always look to the UK first. That's not the whole of the solution. Let's look as far and wide as we can. Let's get some budget operating supermarkets, and let's make sure that people have a better choice. We also have plenty of levers and bells in government as far as benefits go. Community cost bonus is a great way to get money to people who need it most. What we need to do is target those benefits so that they hit the right people. But the good thing is, when that mechanism is already in place, even if it's for a short period of time, you can change the parameters of those benefits to get money to people that need it most. So community cost bonus was enhanced and was expanded to include more people. We could expand that further and make sure that more people get the money that they need when they need it. And then when we're over the worst, it can be pulled back in again as necessary. Thank you.
Malika.
Thank you. The cost of living, I think, is one of the biggest pressures that everyone on door knocking is wanting to address. And yes, one of the biggest support for that would be to enhance the economy and have more targeted support for the ones that actually need it. I believe in preventative care, and Reform Jersey already has delivered free GPs for children, which addresses a big part of that. The enhanced pension plus, allowing more pensioners to access healthcare at the point of need. And when we talk about access to housing, that's a really important part to review the system in the way that more people that are falling out of the brackets of accessing social housing or not supporting rent costs are able to access that way. I also want to explore more of supporting cooperative working for farming and fisheries to be able to work together and promote local products. When I've also proposed taking GST off food. That was defeated 17 against 28. With more members of Reform Jersey, that would have been passed already, and you would have GST on food. And there are more ways of looking of how cost of living can be reduced from freight cost, because that enhances lots of the cost in the existing supermarkets. Yes, we can bring more competition in different supermarkets on like Lidl, Aldi, and that might help. But looking at the costs that those will have on a smaller population to actually function and to have profit, we've tried that model with Morrison, for example, and we've seen that actually Morrison now is more expensive than we've seen it in the UK. So, thank you.
Chris Leck.
Thanks, Vicky. Great question. I think it was Gandhi, to paraphrase him, who said that the society is judged by how it looks after its poor. And as Jesus said, the poor are always with us. So it's incumbent upon us, if we're in government, to make sure that the poor are properly looked after. As Malcolm has said, we have a very good benefit structure. Possibly what we don't have is a good way of making sure people know how to access that. At a couple of other hustings I've been to, food banks have been mentioned, and at one level you can say, well, that's a disgrace that we have them. At another level you can say, well, it's great that we've got people in the community that are working to do that. At the micro level, though, you need to find out why people are using those food banks. Have they not had the right access to benefits? Do they not know what benefits they can get? Then at the macro level, obviously we need to look at freight costs, for instance. I mean, when I discussed this with a local shop near where I live, he said there were two main issues that had his costs going up. One was freight. Now, I think we have the issue with ferry speed, that they're able to take all the goods that come in and off the boats onto the lorries because those lorries are narrow. If we want Lidl and Aldi to come here, they aren't going to want to offload their lorries or their containers at the terminal. They want to drive straight off and take it to their shop. They're not going to want to have a franchise operation. So we need planning to be more flexible. Obviously, they don't want massive, great lorries running down country lanes, but if Lidl are sited properly off a main road, then maybe we can have slightly larger lorries on the main roads taking goods straight there. That could bring costs down. The other thing that is a real pain to local businesses and is keeping the costs of food and everything else up is regulation. We must get regulation and bureaucracy simpler.
Thank you. Robert Parker now.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed for the question. I'd like to finish off about the tax situation, because I think too much tax is on the individual. There's not enough on companies, and obviously the number of locally owned companies is reducing. One of the aspects is withholding tax, but we have to work with both Guernsey and the Isle of Man, so we're all on the same page. That is not going to be easy. Also, Jersey has less double taxation agreements than both Guernsey or the Isle of Man, last time I looked, which is ridiculous. So there's a lot of work to be done. On the other side of it, because the tax is so high on individuals, particularly in Middle Jersey, last year, between about 35 and 55,000, if you took into account Social Security, guess what? If you were in England, you paid slightly less tax than you did in Jersey. That is ridiculous. When I first came back to the island, in hospitality, you could get a round of drinks in a pub for half the price it was in England. That is no longer the case. Who fills up with petrol now, which it used to be absolutely, that's what you did, because it was so much cheaper in Jersey than when you went abroad. It is not the case now. We have got loads of different taxes and things that have come in. On the cost of living related to the supply chain and the other things, there's a lot of work. It's not going to be easy. There's loads of stuff behind the scenes that need to be gone through, and people need to know what they are looking for. There are no quick fixes, unfortunately. But we need to start now, because we actually have a problem going forward where we have an aging population, AI, and therefore we cannot afford to carry on with our tax on individuals. We have to spread the net more effectively. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Louise.
Thank you. I have a lot to say about this one, so thank you for the question. And I really empathise with you because I see myself as Middle Jersey. I'm a single parent and I'm paying a mortgage. I'm working really hard and I'm really feeling it. And it's something that people on the doorsteps are talking about a lot. I've also been working on this over this term of office really hard already. I've been lobbying the government to get the cost of living ministerial group up and running again, which when I was in government, we had that running. And I attended that group and I put my plans to them for making childcare more available and my plans for the 2 to 3 hours for childcare for children, and that was accepted, and I'm very grateful that that was taken forward by the current government as well. So I've already had an impact in that area. I also supported the GP funding for children, and I broke ranks from the government who at the time weren't supporting that because it was really important to me to support that. In terms of the wider picture, and some of the other candidates have spoken about the need to save money, and I think that's the situation that we're in. It's a very difficult situation because Jersey cannot have an impact on some of these global factors, and we have to be realistic about that. I'm not sure that actually a budget supermarket is going to solve all the problems that lots of people seem to think it's going to solve, because I'm concerned about the impact it will have on local businesses. So there's two things that I would like to continue doing, and I've already started doing. There's a project called Minimum Income Standards project, and that would actually work out what people need in terms of income to actually live comfortably in Jersey. Because at the moment, when we're targeting things like the community cost bonus, we don't know what people actually need to earn to pay their bills and to live in Jersey comfortably. I've already lobbied government to include single parents and disabled households in the financial modelling for that, because they weren't going to be included. And if you look at the evidence, actually single parents are the group that are struggling most financially, nearly 70%. The second group that is struggling the most is single adults. I'd also like to see local growers supported, subsidised fruit and veg to families, because that is a achievable project that would support health and local growers, and also the cost of living. Thank you.
Thank you to the candidates. Now I said I'd go to the lady in the black and white next.
Thank you. My name's Tricia Blandon. I've lived in St Saviour's all my life. I've lived in the Five Oaks area for that amount of time as well. So I'm going to bring my question back to parish matters and drawing it back to the Bridging Island plan that was debated in the States in 2021. Part of that Bridging Island plan, there was an amendment made, and that was the promise to deliver a Five Oaks master plan, and that should have been drafted and delivered before the end of 2025. To date, residents of St Saviour's have been let down. In particular, those who have to navigate around the Five Oaks area, travel through that area. We've had no improvements. It's got worse and worse and worse over years, and the area is saturated. So we've not had a plan in draft. We haven't seen any improvements, and there hasn't been any delivery on promises to help slow down traffic, improve accessibility for cyclists, walkers, etc. So my question is, I know there's been a lot of things that have happened individually around some safer areas, routes to school. I know, Malcolm, you're working on like safer a place strategy. I know, Raluca, you've done stuff as well. But it's that holistic master plan that we haven't had. It's not joined up. And, you know, we're now another year down the trot and we've had nothing. So I want to hear more about what you can do to help push that forward so that we actually do get delivery and not another 4 years of nothing.
Okay, thank you for the question. Raluca's answering it first.
Thank you so much for this question, Trish. And I know it's something that we've discussed intensively about this over the emails along these years. And I've pushed with the Environment Minister to get responses and get progress. And unfortunately, all the time the response was that there are not enough funding, there's not a priority, there are always other priorities. But us, and I promise that, and that's always been in my work, parishioners will always come first when the proposals are coming into the States. And the island plan is actually due to be reviewed in this next term. So that's a good opportunity to actually take action and push forward more work done around the 5 Works master plan, because I think that's a great idea. Even on the previous ones, previous island plan, Reform Jersey has always had the stance that we oppose building more against on green fields and protecting the environment. But around 5 Oaks specifically, there is a lot of traffic congestion that needs to be done, pollution. We've been with Andium, for example, in the Sanction area, and we are looking at how you can make that estate more community friendly as well. Like the field that's behind Sanction could have been incorporated to have more of an estate like Grasset Park area to actually bring community together. So that was one of the discussions which wasn't taken forward that I proposed during a visit within the Sanction. We have to look how was also the COP built around that area. It actually brought more traffic and less safety for people going in and out. And that's a worry, especially with so many young people around. So that needs to be addressed. And it needs to be a holistic approach of how that would be done together. And I promise I'll push for that.
Chris Leck.
That sounds like the employment minister who's standing for senator might not be, sorry, not the employment, the environment minister who's responsible for planning might not be being responsible for it, because planning is obviously not working in Jersey. It's not working in terms of the 5 Oaks master plan. It's not working for any number of things, stopping businesses from working and the like. Certainly in terms of road safety, that is definitely something that has come up as I've been going around the parish, particularly the 5 Oaks roundabout. I mean, what staggers me is that there's not a restriction as you go south down Bagatelle Road, because you've got houses with front doors that open onto the road. I mean, that in itself is unbelievable, but it's unbelievable that people can be doing up to 30 miles an hour when there's no traffic around coming up to that roundabout. And then I think it's Aston Close, which is just a little bit further down, virtually impossible to see as you're coming out of that, turning either right or left. And again, you've got traffic heading off fast down and past the roundabout and such like. You've also got all the schools down St Saviour's Hill. Again, most other parishes have 20-mile-an-hour limits where there are schools, if only during the school hours. So maybe we should do something like that. Again, back to the roads, the folk living in Langtree Gardens would like a mirror so they can get out of the road easily turning right, because the traffic going down, particularly out, when it's not too busy, can be going very fast. How did they manage to start doing those houses up at the co-op, opposite the co-op? I thought they were supposed to be having proper sewage and everything else down before that could be done. So, yes, planning needs to get a grip, and we need to, not have this sort of massive, immovable island plan, but we need to get on with it.
Robert Parker.
Thank you. I think the main problem is traffic. And certainly I'd like to see, at the moment, depending on the size of your car and the engine, and if it's electric, you don't pay VED. But the question is, what about if we ended up also adding a tax if someone ended up with a wide car and it's heavy? We have a problem with car parking in town. We have a problem with the numbers of cars on the road and the size and the space they take up. There are lots of very small, very efficient vehicles and other forms of transport that are coming up. And I would love to see a tax on the width and the weight. It's not what you're after. But I think one of the main things is the traffic and trying to basically to deal with that, and the whole parking, the whole issues going down Wellington Road. Obviously you get traffic backed up over Five Oaks, and you're talking about probably the density within Five Oaks. Yeah, but that is something, they have to come up with a plan. They have to look at how to do that sensibly and how we can improve the area. And at the moment, I think, as Chris, I think the planning department are under a lot of strain, and I think it would probably be beneficial taking a lot of the strain off planning, because I think there's a lot of stuff they do they probably shouldn't be doing, and things like planning out how places should look going forward in the future is more important, because there's loads of stuff. In France, they look at the size of your building, what's the outside, what you do inside is down to you. So there's lots of stuff that planning gets involved with that you actually wonder, is it really necessary for them to be involved in that? Thank you.
Louise Dublé.
Thank you. I completely agree. And it's not good enough that the relevant ministers haven't actioned that. And myself and others, we have been putting pressure on those ministers. And it's very frustrating because we don't actually have the decision-making powers in that area, even though it's our parish. It's a combination of government ministers and Constable and Roads Committee. That's the kind of team approach that should be happening. But we do what we can, and certainly you mentioned the play plan, and that was actually a piece of work that I initiated and led with Deputy Lucy Stevenson, and I'm very grateful that the current government took that as it was nearly complete and have seen that through. And that is something that I was talking to Malcolm about, that the actions are starting to be acted upon already. So I feel fairly confident that that will have an impact on the residents of that area, because there's a lot of actions that involve the schools in the area. I think that in terms of building, sometimes we are talking recently about building more homes, but actually we don't actually need any more homes built, and sometimes we're looking at areas around Five Oaks for maybe building more homes, but that's not something that St Saviour actually needs. If you look at the housing gateway, there's not the need for new homes at the moment. We've got enough. So I would oppose any kind of large building developments. Action that I've already taken is I amended the Bridging Island Plan so that new developments have to have outdoor natural play space as part of their development, and they also have to have safe access routes for children to go from those developments. So I have already taken action on that, and I would continue to do so. And another thing that I would really like to see in that area is more trees planted, because that can make a huge difference. Even when we have the traffic flowing through the area, that can make a huge difference to the livability and to the quality of life for the residents in that area. And I think that as well as this long-term Five Oaks master plan, which the ministers really need to get on and do, we've got these small achievable actions, and tree planting is something that is achievable, I think.
Malcolm Ferry.
Thank you, Tricia. When you look back to the first iteration of this government in this assembly, 4 out of the 5 deputies were actually in government, either as ministers or assistant ministers. And now that we've got senators back, whether or not you agree with that, I did vote for it personally. I think it's a good thing for the island. But what it now means is your parish deputies are your parish deputies. And most of the big portfolios will be going to those ministerial benches, which hopefully should leave us with more time to focus on those parish issues. The good thing is the master plan is there, Tricia. What we just need to do is activate it. So this is about working together with the deputies that get elected, with whoever the new infrastructure minister is, to make sure that we push this through. We have been doing lots of work in the background which will move towards that end. And you mentioned the play plan. I was really proud to lead that piece of work and get the play plan in place. Of course, it's only just one part of it. But while I'm talking about improving lives for our children and young people in the parish, obviously lots of the schools are around St Saviour. Most of the island schools are there. It's really hard to move those out of here. That's not going to happen. So what we need to do is find ways of working with the traffic. We need more traffic calming measures to make those roads safer, particularly in the mornings, obviously. One of the other pieces of work that I've been doing is obviously Success has 1,000 authors, but one of the pieces of work that I have been doing that I finally got over the line is the North of Town Youth Centre, which will serve a lot of the children and young people from this parish. That is going to be a fantastic facility on the Old Ann Street Brewery site. It's a £15 million project, but it is going to be a big investment for our children and young people. It's going to give them something to do, give them a safe space, a great environment to either play sports, have some chill-out zones. Because it's such an old building, it's going to be really quirky. So we're keeping, obviously, lots of the heritage from when it was a brewery, but not associated too much with alcohol, more about grain and growth, because that's what it's about. So hopefully that will be opening towards the middle of 2028. I really look forward to opening that, whether or not I'm elected. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have a question from Pink, then here, then there, and then over there. So that's the next four. Okay, here we go.
Hello, my name is Mary O'Keefe and I live down in La Route de Montfond. My question is about the 2-1E policy. Just before the end of the last term, a deputy brought a proposition to reduce the number of 2-1Es into the island. Now, given that the amount of employment that they create with tax accountants, bankers, estate agents, relocation agents, builders, I was really shocked that they would actually want to reduce the numbers to bring into the island. One 2-1E alone put in £3 million into charities this year. If this proposition comes back again to the table, which I believe is on the manifesto of the deputy who brought it the last time, would you be supporting the 2-1E policy or would you be voting against it? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that question. First to answer this time is Chris Leck.
Thanks very much. 2-1Es. I think the proposition that was raised last time was staggering. I don't really understand why people think there is a problem with having 2-1Es on the island. I mean, they come here, they contribute at least £250,000 of tax as soon as they arrive, not even prorated in the year. They're required to contribute £100,000 to charity. They do fantastic charitable work. I was with a children's trust the other day, and they said they received a £25,000 donation from the 2-1Es. The 2-1Es are supporting small businesses in Jersey. I mean, they use gardeners, housekeepers, plumbers, electricians, surveyors, builders, you name it. They're making use of the airport, but they're not using any of the services. They typically won't be on the buses. They typically won't be using the health department and everything else. There are a huge number of large houses that are available for them to occupy. So I absolutely do not understand why there's not support for the 2-1Es. And I think we should have more of them as much as we're able to take. To put an artificial cap on it means you'll start getting into ridiculous situations as people get nearer to the point of arriving, because then they might have started spending fees on lawyers and everything else, and then suddenly be told, oh, sorry, we can only have 18 this year, you can't make it. by all means have an overall assessment of where we think we're going with 2-1Es and how many the island could actually want. But I think it's a no-brainer. They're bringing so much money when we need it, and we're going to need their money. Trust you me, it's not going to get easier over the next few years to keep taxes coming in to pay for all the expenditure that we've got.
Thank you. Robert Parker.
I think Chris has basically said more or less what I was probably going to say. But the issue is that over the next few years, we are going to find it's going to be really difficult. I think we have got one of the biggest changes in our life coming down with AI. It's going to be like the Industrial Revolution in relation to how it affects white-collar jobs. So the issue is where you have got a tax income that is coming in, which means that it gives us more maneuverability in relation to how we deal with other aspects. It would be crazy to cut that income out when we are going to have to basically work out how we're going to cut costs. It is not going to happen overnight. How to readjust our tax system in a more effective way going forward. We need time to readjust and change direction in relation to where the island goes for the future. And that's really, I mean, that from me is so important, because I can't stand by and see what I see as basically a train crash coming down if we carry on as we have been doing. Thank you.
Louise.
Thank you. Interesting question. Not one that I particularly have strong feelings about. I'll be honest with you, but I will give a view on it. And I've just been reflecting on this as I was thinking about the question. First of all, the employment that they create and this theory of trickle-down wealth, I think that theory has actually been disproven, and I'm not sure that actually, given the widening inequality in our island, that has actually been demonstrated. And certainly when I'm speaking to parishioners, the feeling that there is widening inequality and that people are really struggling with the cost of living more and more, that is self-evident. But the 1,000K contribution to charity and the $250,000 tax, that's something that, I can accept that if we are having people who are wealthy coming into our island and they're contributing, then on balance, then I can probably accept that. I don't think that it is fair to say that they're not using our local services, because actually I chair the health scrutiny panel, and if you look at the consultants, the same consultants that we are, people who don't have private health are on huge waiting lists to see. It's the same consultants that people can pay to see privately. And the more people who are paying to access privately, the longer the waiting lists are for the rest of us who aren't accessing private health. So it does have an impact in more ways than we might realise. I think that £100,000 charity contribution is not actually compulsory. And what I've heard is that actually the contributions to charities are not actually coming through. And whilst we have so many struggling charities, it's absolutely imperative that those who can afford to make contributions, and many wealthy residents that I've spoken to really want to do that, and there should be ways that they can do that easily and be in touch with the charities. That needs to happen, because if we are letting people come to our island and we're not letting other people in so easily, why are nurses and teachers and other workers that we need to deliver services, they're just as important to me. I think that charitable contribution, if we are going to maintain that system, it's got to be something that actually happens from those people who are coming to our island.
Malcolm Ferry.
Thank you for that question, Mary. So 2-1Es, or to give them the other title, high-value residents. I prefer to use the term high net worth residents, because that's what they are. They are wealth creators. They do come in on a specific set of terms that they're going to pay so much income tax. They do contribute to the economy. Of course, they take from the economy as well by the very fact that they live here. That, no one's disputing that. But when it comes to charitable giving, I know of lots of charities who are supported directly by high-value residents or high-net-worth residents. So it's, whilst there is nothing actually set in stone as to what they must contribute, there is a government department set up called Locate Jersey, and part of their remit is to establish connections, and when people want to come to the island, discuss with them how that philanthropic giving is going to look like. And I do know that lots of them, they have particular interests either in children or a particular illness, and they are very keen to not just contribute to those charities, but to actually get involved, understand the work, meet the staff. And I know that because I've been involved in plenty of charities who have really big benefactors as their support. And without those people, they wouldn't be able to continue to do the work that they do. So the question was, would I vote to support any reduction? No, I wouldn't. I would say the current allocation actually isn't being exceeded anyway. In most years, it's not even being used up. So I think we need to encourage wealth creators to come to the island whilst not taking away from anyone in the community who's already here. But by and large, people who come to the island who are high net worth clients, high net worth residents, they do contribute far more to the economy than they ever take out. So that's my take on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Raluca Kovac.
Thank you for the question. And if I wasn't sure if the reference was made that was in the Reform Jersey Manifesto, because that's not true if that was the case. I misunderstood. So my stance on it is, first of all, I voted against that proposal because I don't find fair of targeting a number of what the island needs as a net worth investment, because they are contributing to the economy, and especially without having a proper review to see how much of that contribution we still need in, or how many would be the appropriate number. You can't impose something like that, a proposal on. So I voted against that part. What I do support instead is looking at a fair balanced contribution from them. And whilst I agree that many of them contribute to funds with funds to charities and in other parts of the economy, especially how Lee said, not having that compulsory, there are also people which fall through that part. And having balanced review of the system, of the 2&E system, the high net worth residents, not in the sense of not having them here, but how we can have them support more targeted the needs of our island, because that's the way you contribute to what the island needs and enhance employment in the areas where we need them. Thank you.
Thank you for those answers. Now, next question, please. Who did I say was next? I think it was you, wasn't it, at the back? With the green jumper. Then I'll come to you, and then I must write this down. Then I'll come to Caroline. Okay.
I'm Ash Grombo. So my question is, I actually grew up at the south of the parish in Clogosset, and obviously life sometimes, and eventually, I ended up living in a single home, and things were difficult back then, and this is, talking over 20 years ago. Things have gotten a lot more expensive since then. So my question is, and also, on the flip side, I'm now in my 30s. I'm coming to the point where, settling down, putting down roots, having kids, all of that is actually a part of the conversation with me and my age group. So what would you do, if elected, to help younger people like me put down roots in the island?
Thank you for the question. First to answer this time is Robert Parker.
Okay, I think that putting down roots in the island has got to be one of the most important things. Is basically affordable housing. The other bit is effectively cheaper mortgages than we get at the moment, because they are obviously more expensive than what they are obviously on the mainland, which doesn't seem to be fair. There are schemes which are related to affordable housing. I'm involved in an affordable housing development in Guernsey on a joint venture with the Guernsey Housing Authority. But I do think that we should be looking after young people to come back. Obviously, jobs as well is important. I think diversifying the economy to give people actually, more confidence in the future as to what they can do and advancement. Because at the moment, I think quite a lot of the jobs have been basically, concentrated towards either, working in the States or working in finance. And I think we need to look at trying to get more opportunities. But to grow the economy as such, we need a finance industry which is actually fit for purpose for small and medium-sized companies. And at the current moment in time, our banking system and the way it works is fine for international, but for small and local businesses, I don't think it is fit for purpose, and that is a serious problem. So I think, to build up those opportunities, a lot is to do with the economy, and also to make, obviously increasing wages, lower tax, the ability to end up with a deposit, and making housing more affordable. Thank you.
Louise Dublé next.
Thank you. Brilliant question. I'm no longer in my 30s, unfortunately. I was the first time I sat here, and a lot of the questions that you're asking are things that I have been working on really hard over the last 12 years. I think there hasn't been an infrastructure around family life. I think families have been left to kind of get on with it. There hasn't actually been coordinated thinking about what do families need, because our problem in Jersey has historically always been overpopulation, right? And when we've been at conferences with other small island jurisdictions, all the other small islands would be saying, oh, actually our problem is we've got a low birth rate and people leaving the island. This is a new problem for Jersey, but actually it's one that we really need to get to grips with really quickly. Childcare is one of the most important things in terms of costs for families. Housing is the obvious one. That's the obvious one, and I think the shared ownership schemes are really important, not just for first-time buyers, but also people who are moving from perhaps a small flat and they want to go and acquire a family home. So I don't think those schemes should be limited to first-time buyers. They should be broader. But childcare, and that's something that I have worked really hard on. First of all, the age 3 to 4 childcare, I defended and extended that at the age 2 to 3. But I have recently published with my scrutiny subpanel a family-friendly employment legislation review, and there's a road mapping in there that addresses a lot of the things that you have asked and that would make Jersey a better place for families. Young people are telling me that they want more arts and culture, more sporting opportunities. The island needs to be a place that is fun to be in and interesting, and there's things to do, not just for young people, but for all of us. And I think that spending on the arts and culture, the 1%, that's something that I supported and defended when it was challenged, because yes, we have a cost of living crisis, but we also need to actually have a quality of life, what we can enjoy and be together, and opportunities to celebrate being alive. And environment is the other thing. I have always defended green spaces, trees, clean air, clean water, and that's something that we need for our families in Jersey.
Malcolm Ferry.
Okay, thank you for that question. So we have a shared equity scheme at the moment called First Steps, which is helping some people get on the ladder. But let's do a little experiment here. Who remembers the States Loan Scheme? Yeah, right. Who bought their first house on the States Loan Scheme? Put your hands up. Okay, so I was one of those people. Fantastic scheme. What it was, for anyone who doesn't know, it was a cap and collar scheme where you paid interest between a certain amount, 5 and 10%. If you were on a lower income, or if only one of you was working, then you would defer any unpaid interest onto the top of the capital, which would only be paid back either when you sold that property or when you came to the end of the mortgage. And of course, if you left it till the end of the mortgage, inflation eroded the value of that sum anyway. So it was a great way for people to have flexibility, because if after, traditionally, perhaps the female would stay at home and look after the children, but if after the children had grown up a bit and the family wanted to return to work, both parents, then what would happen is that would then go back up to the market rate. Let's look at the other side of it then. Who here is buying their property on the First Step scheme? Okay, that's probably not a fair comparison because it is a much newer scheme, to be fair, but we're not investing in our people. You know, if you'd have asked that same question, who was buying their property on a state's loan scheme and it was still live, you'd have the same number of people that would put their hands up. The way you make sure that people stay in Jersey, it's a fantastic place to live. It's a great place to bring your families up. But we need to enable people on ordinary incomes to be able to buy their own property. And the state's loan scheme was the best way that we could achieve that. And it's the best way that we can do it again in the future. Thank you very much.
Raluca Kovac.
Thank you, and for the question. Granville area has been, as we know, heavily affected as well by the flood and other tragedies in that period, and that enhanced the cost and the struggles that were there. And when we talk about housing and access to housing, we want to make sure that the quality of life of those housing that you live in are also appropriate. So the proposal is also to look at building more of actually just family size housing, to not just survive where you live, but to be able to expand and build a family there. And as you were looking at having children as well in the future, looking from the onset of how you can support children, I'm also part of a baby-friendly initiative, which supports every child from the onset and every family of having a more work-life balance. And that's one aspect very important. And talking about free childcare going forward, that we also expanded this term for the 2 to 3 years olds, and Reform Jersey Manifesto wants to progress that even further. That allows that balance for more parents to be able to come back to work. Looking at bringing back or making young people to want to stay on the island. We're looking at different incentives of supporting young people at housing part. We are looking at a deposit scheme, saving scheme for young people, besides other incentives of bringing them back on the island. Besides the first step scheme, which in my opinion was a great success and helped many people looking to get on the property ladder actually access homes, Reform Jersey proposes a rent to buy scheme, which I think would be very valuable. Thank you.
Chris Leck.
So, help young people to put down roots. What staggers me is that my 2 younger children went to the UK and came back, despite the fact that it is ridiculously, sorry, yeah, came back because I was here, no. Despite the fact that it's staggeringly expensive to compare to where they were living, which was around Basingstoke and Hull, which are fairly cheap areas to live. The only way they can do it is by coming back with their partners and taking on a 1 or 2 bedroomed flat, which costs the best part of £1,800 a month. You think how much you've got to earn to do that. I was also brought up with the expression, it's better to pour money down your own drain rather than somebody else's. So therefore, you should be using that £1,800 a month to pay a mortgage. And I totally agree that the states should be helping with first-time buyers. What I don't quite understand is why they have to buy this affordable housing first-time buyer property. I just think they should be able to buy whatever property they want, providing the bank is willing to lend against it. That would be great. Because, I don't know about you, but when I've bought a house, I've usually tried to buy an old wreck of a place, do it up, and then I can afford to move into a bigger house and then have children. And so let's not restrict the houses that are on the first-time buyers scheme. Another thing I think we should be doing is bringing back mortgage interest relief. There's no doubt that interest rates are going to go up. They're not going to go down because of what's been going on in the Middle East. So we've got to help the young, and indeed, I think it's great with the buying schemes that there are around. Actually, you can be middle-aged as well. on terms of the first-time buyer scheme, but why has it got to be first time? You know, that's what I would be saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. I think we'll go to this gentleman at the front. Just somebody coming with the mic now.
Thank you. Andrew Legale. I'd like to follow up on Tricia Blandon's very relevant question a moment ago in relation to future potential development in our parish. While she was very clearly and eruditely mentioned the area of Five Oaks, I'd like to take the candidate's attention to the far eastern border of our parish, and namely the old St Saviour's Hospital site. And so to be clear, not the Clinic Pinnell area to the north of the main road, but the old St Saviour's Hospital to the south of the main road. This is a massive site, and I'm particularly concerned about two things. One is that there's lots of people in the depths of government beavering away with some wonderful master plan that's going to be launched at some unknown time in the future, with no doubt some, what I'd facetiously call some fluffy picture, with some rather sentimental attitudes to it, with lots of mature trees which have instantly grown. And behind it, we'll be expected to comment on that, and behind it will be the whole caboodle of how it's all going to look, and it's all done and dusted without any consultation. So my question to you is I'd like to ask two questions. One is, if you're elected, what would you do to galvanize the parish and make sure that we can get involved in this master plan, not in terms of the pretty fluffy pictures, but in terms of the principle of the development of what could be placed there in this mammoth area. And my second question is, would you agree that all the historical planning regulations should be completely ignored for that huge building that has terrible connotations to the previous populace of the island? That should be all ignored, and that you would support the complete destruction of that building on the basis that the stone could be used in an innovative way for what could be a fantastic development for not just our parish, but for the island as well.
Thank you for the question. Louise Dublé will be answering first.
Thank you for that. There's a lot to answer there, and I'll try and cover as much as I can. I'll start with the bit at the end about the historic planning on the site. And I think I agree with you. For me, when I'm looking at a site that's going to be built on, it's the natural environment that is the most important. I do think that we need to preserve our built environment and our heritage there, but I think you make a very good point about the history of the site, and I think if preferably a local architect can come up with a way to use the materials in a way that is going to be of benefit to the community, I'm very open to that, and I think it's a good idea. To go back to the beginning, and you mentioned fluffy pictures, and yes, you're absolutely spot on there, and this is something that I've had success with in the past in a different part of the island when we were looking at the new hospital site, and I amended some of the plans for that hospital site to make sure that, first of all, Jersey Trees for Life were consulted in the plans for the access road up there, and that mature trees should be saved, because you're absolutely right. What we're in the habit of doing in Jersey is saying saying we're going to chop this 50-year-old tree down and replace it with a whip that is probably going to die and is not going to sustain any animal or insect life that was living in it. And there's something called biodiversity net gain that I would really like to see progress on all of our significant planning sites like this, because that, the gentleman before who was talking about settling in the island and the future of the island, if we don't do things like this consistently across these big planning sites, we are going to lose the birdsong, we're going to lose the trees, we're going to lose the beautiful environment that we have, and those things are really important. So that's what I would do.
Malcolm Ferry.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. So let's take the first one. How do we galvanise the parish? We are here for you. So, let's at a parish meeting, get together, discuss it, and move forward together. That is how you galvanise the parish. You start by galvanising us. And of course, if the right people get elected, we will galvanise ourselves as well. You spoke about planning. Of course, that is a listed building, and obviously there will be challenges. But any listing can be reversed, can be overturned for the greater good. So, not that it's easy, but it is still possible. When you speak about the fluffy pictures, I think sometimes the fluffy pictures are the vision, and sometimes you need the vision to create the reality. Even if the reality isn't exactly the way that you started out, at least we move forward by thinking big, thinking better, and part of what we need to do is there'll be a new planning committee in the new iteration of the next government, and those people will be open to all sorts of ideas and suggestions. So, let's work with the new planning committee to see what the art of the possible is, and let's get something done with that area, because whilst there'll still be a health facility on the other side of the road, that will be a fantastic piece of land to do something with, to develop, so that, people can have homes there and we can have a fantastic environment. Otherwise, that building is just going to cost us more and more whilst we do nothing with it. Thank you.
Raluca Kovac.
Thank you for the question. And actually, even when the new hospital plan came in discussion and the consultation was made parish by parish, and including this part for the St. Saviour side, I was involved in ongoing conversations with parishioners neighboring that site, and was a lady representative of all the neighbors there that we arranged discussion and to be involved in the decisions process, and I was the liaison between the health minister to have more updated information for that site. And I think that needs to be ongoing communication. The public needs to be always consulted, and especially parishioners living in the area are the most affected, so you want their opinion on it. During the last term, I was always regularly organizing meetings with deputies and constable and drop-ins together for us to work cohesively on helping parishioners and hearing their voices without duplicating our work, and see how collectively we can enhance that work and work together, and I think we should continue that. And yes, parish assemblies could be used for that, but also we can make use of this parish for more than we did before for drop-ins, but in other areas, so people have more accessible access. And always your voice should be heard. In respect of the planning, because it's a listed building, I don't think it can be scrapped directly, as you say, completely, but there are a lot of red herrings and barriers that could be eased, and that needs to be reviewed. And talking about coming back to the new hospital plan, and that's a more discussion of the hospital, we have to look on if actually all those sites that we're talking about having the hospital are needed, and how we can also enhance the area surrounding in the more benefit of the parishioners. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Leck.
Thanks. I think the answer to the second question is easy. Knock it down. I mean, if you want to try and keep the facade and build around it, you've only got to look at Broad Street to see what's going to happen. I mean, what a nonsense. I mean, the facade they've kept there is not even attractive. You've had a cinema up in David Place. Ugliest building I've ever seen. So, knock it down, I agree. By all means, have some sort of memorial site to what went on there in the past. But let's not get in the way. I would then agree with Malcolm. What should we do with it? I mean, fantastic space. I mentioned earlier that we've not got any sports or recreational facilities up at this end of the island. Well, what a great place to think about. Maybe a skateboarding park for the young. Maybe some paddle courts. I mean, maybe some tennis courts. Who knows? I shouldn't say tennis courts because that's a game for the old. But look, there's an opportunity up there, isn't there, with consultation with those who are living around and within the parish as to what we can do. And let's not, get planning in the way. I understand the need for biodiversity, but the total of land in Jersey that's built upon is around about 5%. So I don't think that we're going to do much harm to wildlife and such like by just looking at that site, deciding what to do with it. Let's do that and get on with it.
Robert Parker.
Hi, Andrew. Very interesting question. I think one of the things, dealing with states departments, they seem to have fluffy pictures and bits and pieces, and they tell us what we're going to do. It's rather like headmaster telling you naughty students, and this is what you're going to have to do. So I think every parish should have a much more direct involvement in what happens in their parish. So I think we should have our own committee, we should work with planning, and we should create our own island plan or our own part of it. And we should communicate with the other parishes and the like. But I think there should be much more local involvement in what we want. Now, I don't know what we should be doing up at that, with that building. The idea of knocking it down makes a lot of sense. But I think there are lots of people who could come up with some very interesting ideas, ways in which, could be highly beneficial to the parish as a whole and for the longevity of, basically everybody who, lives in our parish. But I do think we need to be much more involved as a parish in those decisions by planning. I mean, I deal with various departments, and I can tell you, I find it so frustrating when the industry knows best how to do something, and we're having to wait on someone who hasn't got a clue telling us what we should be doing. So to be honest, we need to really grab this, and we should make the movement to really control it as to what we want and how we design our parish going forward. So we're all committed and actually have ownership of what's happening to us. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question from somebody at the back. I can't remember who that was. Maybe they're not there anymore. Okay, we'll go to lady in the scarf, Caroline, and then we'll go to there second, then there, and then here. I think that'll probably be all we have time for. So, your question, please. Mike's just coming.
Caroline Spencer. I live and work in the parish. The Jersey Employment Trust has its main office in St Saviour. You'll no doubt be aware of the funding issues that the charity faced earlier in the year, which led to 5,000 people signing a petition. The question is, do you believe the states have a duty to fund specialist employment support for disabled and disadvantaged islanders? Yes or no, and why?
So, Malcolm Ferry first.
Thank you, Caroline, for that question. I think, firstly, the signing of that petition was a great example of people power and how those petitions, there's not very often that they hit everyone's heartstrings and get to that 5,000 mark, but it got there really quickly, which shows the strength of feeling amongst the island. I think the answer to your question, Caroline, is do we have a duty of care? Absolutely, we have a duty of care. Your clients can give so much to our society in different ways, and we need to nurture your clients, and we need to make sure that they have engaged in meaningful occupation, which is good for their health and well-being, and it's good for us as a society. You know what I'd really like to see? When I was Assistant Minister for Social Security, I had responsibility in a sort of coined phrase, Minister for Charities. What we need is a portfolio which is Minister for Charities and the community. In that way, we could make sure that charities get the help that they need, properly serviced on 3-year agreements which are index linked so that they can plan for the future. They can employ their staff accordingly on proper contracts. I've run a charity. I know what it's like when you go year on year. Am I or aren't I going to get the money that I need to completely service my staff, who in turn service clients? And it's hard to give people that surety. So let's get a proper Ministry for Charities and a proper portfolio. That would also expand into Minister for Charities and the community. And that would encompass our older generation. It would also include long-term care, so that we could start to make joined-up decisions in a separate portfolio with one person having not just the title, but having the actual clout and the legal responsibility to make a difference. And in that way, because if you look around the different portfolios, there are so many different ministers who fund different charities. And, you know, because of that, sometimes it's not the foremost in their mind. It only becomes the foremost in their mind when it becomes a big problem. Give it to one person where it is their problem, day in, day out, and they will make sure that the value of charities is recognised and that they are funded appropriately and looked after properly. Thank you for that question, Caroline.
Raluca Kovac.
Thank you for that question. And yes, we have a duty of care, and I believe the charitable sector is doing a massive work supporting the work of the government and is contributing massively. So we have to make sure that funding is something that is allocated on a longer term for them to be able to plan appropriately. But I also think that better communication needs to be done between charities and the government in that sense on when funding is allocated, to make sure that there is done based on a sustainable business model that ensures that funds are used in the most effective way. Thank you.
Chris Leck.
Thanks, Caroline. I guess I have a bit of an inside track, being the financial controller of, financial trustee rather, for JET for 10 years. Better communication with the charities and government. Goodness me, Caroline, the amount of time we spent trying to persuade the government to support JET. Unbelievable. I mean, we're doing the work better and more cheaply than the previous Social Security Department was able to. It staggered me in the discussions when I saw it in the press that the impression that the Social Security Minister gave was that JET was going to exceed its budget. And you got the impression it was going to exceed its budget because they were lazy or going for long lunches or just weren't in control of what they were going to do. The reason that the budget was exceeded was that the number of people with mental disabilities and with long-term health conditions, which JET are treating, is increasing. The budget's not in JET's control. The number of people that need JET's services are increasing year by year. The government has to recognise that. We did a huge amount of work to persuade the government that actually, and I've seen this with a number of other charities, and I've discussed it with other organisations, is you've got to persuade the government that for every pound they get, that they give us, they're actually going to get more back. One of the problems we have with the states of Jersey is silo mentality. I remember years ago trying to bring in central procurement. Do you think the departments wanted that? Absolutely not. They wanted to buy their own high-vis vests. Ridiculous. So the problem you had with JET was that Social Security was the one giving the money. Treasury was the one receiving the income tax. So, you know, if you can't work that out, so, you know, better communication. You can't communicate with someone who's not listening.
Robert Parker.
Yes, I think it's an excellent question. I signed the petition, and I think it's absolutely right. I think they do a wonderful job, and the idea of ending up with short-term, concept of having to apply every year is utterly ridiculous. There should be actually a formula whereby it actually basically specifies how much you should get for the number of people that you're basically, helping, so that there is basically a structure which is easy to deal with. Everybody knows where it is. We end up benchmarking so we can see what's happening in our society as a whole. Is this a problem that we should be looking at other things to try and deal with so we don't have as many people, with mental issues and the like? But it is, you see it so often that it's sort of like government has this idea that it's like a cancer, it's just growing. People want to have control over everything, even if it's not, an efficient way of doing it. We've seen that with family nursing recently. They're wanting to take that back under the sort of hospital, or health, I should say. But, it's ridiculous. So I think that, there has been a problem. And, Chris has mentioned, silo mentality and other issues in government. But there has to be some pragmatism where people are working together. And I can imagine, sort of a council of ministers, everybody looking there as to how much money their department should get. Nobody actually seeing the wood for the trees and actually making proper decisions which are properly thought out related to the island as a whole. Thank you.
Louise Dublé.
Is that me? Sorry. Thank you. Yes, so I remember when this petition was published, and it was my scrutiny panel that was scrutinising the funding in this area. So I did have conversations with the minister at the time, given the strength of public feeling and having learnt about what the charity does and the strength of public feeling behind it. It just shows the good that charity is doing. I'm a big advocate for disabled islanders, and I think the fact is that more islanders are living with chronic health conditions and with disabilities year on year. So there is going to be a greater need for funding for charities like JET. And I agree with what the previous answers have said about multi-year funding, and this is something I have fought for in the past and helped to achieve for other charities. Some charities do have this, but it needs to be standard across the board, especially where you have a charity that is as effective as JET is. I think that the multi-year funding is not enough. I think there also needs to be help for charities in terms of resources, administrative resources, because sometimes we have charities doing similar things that could actually work well together and give better value for money. And one thing I wasn't happy about with the funding that was given to JET is that actually what happened is that it was redirected from other work that was being worked on for people with disabilities, which I actually think is really shameful, and that money should not have been taken away from other projects that other islanders with disabilities could have benefited from. And I think that the disabled community should have been given more of a say in that, and nothing about us without us should be the principle that we are working on when we're talking about charities that help people with disabilities. So I think that funding needs to be looked at in the long term. I don't think it's secure. I think that was a stopgap. So that's something that the next Assembly will certainly have to address, and I would support that sustainable funding for JET and for similar charities that are doing work supporting disabled islanders.
Thank you. Next question. There's a lady there with her hand up. You could take a mic to her.
Hi, thank you. My name's Sophie Reed. Most of you probably already know me because I've emailed you a whole load of questions, but this one is purely from my own perspective. A lot of you have talked about younger children and childcare, but what a lot of people in my bracket and my group of friends are struggling with is having teenagers, the cost of feeding, the cost of clothing, they get bigger. What do you propose to do for those islanders who, aren't necessarily mortgage-free or have bought a first-time buyer home? They're still going to be looking at their mortgage prices going up on big house prices. Mine, for example, I paid £625,000 for an Andium first-time buyer scheme. I was not given any stamp duty relief because my mortgage went over the threshold. Myself and my husband have 4 teenagers living in our house. We don't have 4 together. May just add, we're a blended family. And, you know, we are struggling. I also have a cancer diagnosis, so, you know, we are struggling. I can't work full-time. It's left to my husband a lot of the time. So what do you propose to do for families in our situation? Thank you.
Raluca Kovac is the first to answer.
Thank you, Sophie. And as previously talking on these issues together and sending through the email with the questions around the neurologic support as well and charities, one of the parts of supporting young children and families is working with the young children on having support packages for young people, both on education and housing. I mentioned support with deposit for young people. I think that would be a good start because from early on, they're going to be able to save more on that part. I was, during the last term, a trustee of the Mofont Youth Center as well and closely involved with the youth services work. I even proposed to have that statutory enshrined in law to make sure that that won't be removed like it happened in the UK. And to support the work of the youth center is addressing also the needs of young people that gather there in that part. On housing support part, I totally understand the accessible issues and how the cost of living impacts on food and all these other parts. So on housing precisely, I think the rent-to-buy scheme that I have mentioned that we want to put in place, it's also a good step, even better than the packages that exist, because you will already live in the area where you want to buy, and that's enhancing the social aspect of the community that you live in. And just as a correction, because I remember Chris has mentioned before, the first-time buyer scheme is actually referring to private properties. So it is the private market, it's not just the affordable social housing. Thank you.
Chris Leck.
Thanks, Sophie, and you certainly have my sympathies with your condition and all that you're going through. Taxation. I don't quite understand why we have stamp duty at all. I think it's an invidious tax. Most of us have bought a house out of taxed income. Some of us want to downsize, but we can't downsize because we're going to face stamp duty. Complete nonsense. We should do away with it. In terms of cost of living, you know, we've discussed, you know, the issues there and the actions that we need to take to try and get that down. I think one of the things that should be considered when you're looking at support available to families like yours, Sophie, is the net disposable income. Sometimes you just start off with the gross income, and then that's all that's taken into account, and there's not any regard to the amount of expenditure and downtime that you're experiencing and the support that you have to get in to help you. I think another area, we've talked a bit about Middle Jersey, and it seems to me that you're in that gap, is that you know, I think we ought to review the taxation system. The marginal relief, as Robert mentioned earlier, is high. You know, we should try and get it down. We should try to make sure that whatever else we do, that we're not in a position of having to put taxes up because we're not managing the economy properly.
Robert Parker.
All right. Yeah, sorry to hear about, obviously, you know, the hardships and what you've got to face. But I think that, one is obviously the cost of living, and it is what we can do about that. A lot of it is actually created by the states. And we have basically a reducing, quality of life in many ways, because as basically inflation goes up, and we've had pretty high inflation in Jersey, so every year it goes up, say it goes 5%. You end up 5% extra in wages, then you end up with about 33 and a bit % taken off by the time you've taken Social Security, marginal relief, marginal relief tax, plus the 1.95 on basically long-term care. But guess what? All the other costs are all going up by inflation. So your quality of life, you're getting squeezed. So the situation is we have to look at how we end up running this island. And it is related to, one, the tax system. We have to basically look at cost of living like a business. We can't just basically turn a blind eye to some of the stuff that is going on in this island. It is affecting all of us. My industry in tourism is on its knees at the moment. One of the things is trying to basically provide value for money. And all of our benefits of having a value for money and having a really competitive cost product has gone up in smoke because of basically, well, it's very difficult because of the way in which the states have operated for very many years. It is not something that's happened overnight. But going back to your personal scenario, there probably should be a safety net where someone is in basically an unfortunate situation like yourself that is done on an individual basis rather than is structured within government, because that becomes a problem that then people manipulate it. And I wonder if there is a way, something like that can be done in the way that basically stuff used to be done in the parish related to helping out people who had, needs. So it was something that it wasn't fixed in stone, that it had to be paid. It was something that was done on compassion and people could understand it. Thank you.
Louise Dublé.
Thank you. And there's a lot there. And I think something that one of the previous speakers mentioned about not knowing exactly what families need in order to live. And that's something I referred to earlier, the minimum income standards work that's going on. I will continue pushing for that, because what that will do will give us the data to understand what different types of families are facing in terms of costs. And one of the financial models for that piece of work should be a family, maybe a larger family with teenagers, because I understand that the costs are probably quite different, especially when there's not childcare costs being funded by government. We do need to save public money, but we also do need to keep investing in initiatives that will help islanders. And what I would like to see and what I will be pushing for is multi-purpose policies. So for your family, Sophie, you've spoken about teenagers. And when I've spoken to teenagers, what they tell me is they want more things to do. And I think Jersey is getting better at that. And one of the things that I achieved in this term with the health scrutiny panel is a preventative health roadmap, because when we scrutinized the health budget, we found that actually the public health department had all these fantastic evidence-based ideas for initiatives that would help with the cost of living, that would improve islanders' health and would support local businesses, and they weren't being approved and getting the funding. So we've asked for a roadmap for that. And one of the projects that I really liked and that had really strong evidence behind it for improving health was funded activity clubs for older children, which is something that we don't have at the moment. And putting that investment into those children is giving them something to do. It's improving their physical and mental health. It's helping families with the cost of living. And it's a very good investment. And that's something that I would support. It's not just sporting clubs. It would be creative things. And the teenagers I've spoken to, they want places where they can go and do theatre, where they can go and do the arts, places where they can mix with people not just their own age. And we must provide activities for children that are an alternative to screens and social media, and that give them that opportunity to connect with their community in a way that will help families with the cost of living as well.
Malcolm Ferry.
Thank you, Sophie, for that question. We went canvassing together before the last election, Sophie, and the thing that always amazed me about you is your ability to instantly connect with people and your warmth. And I think you deserve better than what you've been through recently, and I hope that brighter days are ahead for you. Let's look at stamp duty. I suspect the reason you paid that sum was because you were tripped over into the next band because of the purchase price of your property of £625,000. So rather than take a blunderbuss to stamp duty, because it's easy to say, let's get rid of it, but what do we replace it with? You know, stamp duty brings in a huge amount of money to the exchequer at a time when we know we need to bring in as much money as we can. So let's be realistic about what we can do with stamp duty. Perhaps we could look at raising the thresholds because property prices have increased, but let's be realistic rather than just cast things aside because they don't appear to be working on the surface. Teenagers are expensive, aren't they? I remember when my two young girls, they always wanted something. There are lots of inexpensive things to do in Jersey. There are lots of free things to do in Jersey. I think Raluca mentioned about the youth service, and I said earlier on in the evening about the North of Town Youth Centre. Perhaps your children will be, you know, not beyond the age where they want to go to youth centres by the time it gets built. But the beauty of those youth centres is they are incredibly cheap. So they are £2 to get in, and once you're in, you have the run of the place with all the facilities that entails. So, you know, we have to think more creatively for our children and young people. We have to create better spaces for them, and we have to make sure that we can provide things as cheaply as we possibly can. So that may not be all the answers, Sophie. Oh, the other thing that just sprang to mind is I'm sure you have spoken to income support in the past. I don't want to go into your personal situation, but there is an element of income support which will pay for the interest-only element of a mortgage if your circumstances have changed, as yours quite obviously have. So perhaps it's worth investigating that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now it's just gone 5 to 9, and I know you each want to kind of finish up with saying a few words yourselves. Are you happy to do that, or do you want to have one more quick question? We need to be a quick one, or you've already had one, so I think we need to go to somebody who hasn't. Eh? Yeah, okay, one minute, okay. How about the man at the back? Is it a quick question? Yeah. Okay. Make it a nice succinct question and we'll have quick answers.
Oh, well, yeah, my name's Brett Wickenden. I live in St Saviour's. Lots have been said in this election about responsibility, and I think government, you know, having responsibility is really easy. I was in government myself. But accountability seems to be something that's completely lacking. While in government, I saw millions of pounds of money wasted and nobody held account for it. What I want to know from yourselves is, what will you do constructively to hold the government more account for its spending, for its deliverables on its capital projects, and also for its behaviour, because it's quite a toxic place.
Okay, Chris Leck first. 1 minute each now.
Thanks. How do we hold departments more accountable? Well, one of the problems we actually have is the way the States of Jersey is structured. And as I understand it, departments all have their own budgets. They're set within about 3 months of us being elected, but actually one of those months you're on holiday. You have a nonsense that the treasurer and the finance director, effectively, of a large organisation cannot get into the weeds of the department's expenditure. Departments end up having budgets. Guess what? They end up spending the budget. And they say they can do that because it's in their plans. So I believe that the treasurer and the treasury minister should have much more control over what the other departments are spending and how they're spending it.
Thank you. Robert Parker.
Yes, when I was on public accounts, one of the things I felt was a massive problem were capital projects, which I think is where a lot of the wastage goes. And one of the issues was that under capital projects, there is no charge to the department. So if you're a department and you're running things and you could actually repair something, guess what? You have to suffer the repair costs out of your budget. But if you basically push it in with a kitchen sink into a capital project, surprise, surprise, it doesn't cost you anything. Added to that, because there is no charge, say like 2.5% or 3% per year, there is no incentive to bring the costs down on capital projects, or to repair things properly, or to deal with things sensibly. So you end up with a lack of accountability in the system. That is so basic accounting standards in relation to any corporate or normal business. If I ran my business like the state's run it, I'd be probably bust within about 3 years. So thank you.
Louise.
Thank you. I have always held government to account for their spending, mostly in the scrutiny roles that I do. So one of the largest pieces of work that any scrutiny panel does is scrutinising the budget. And that's something that we go line by line and we look at everything that is being spent and where it is being allocated. And I have done that since I was first appointed as a scrutiny chair 12 years ago. And something that I have learnt and that I think that actually the States Assembly needs to go back to is multi-year financial plans, because what we have at the moment is these one-year budgets. And this goes back to the charity question as well. I think that we would have a lot more control over our spending and a lot more of a long-term view if we went back to that multi-year financial plans.
Malcolm Ferry.
Thank you. My answer to that question about increasing responsibility and accountability is very simple. I think what we need to do is remind ministers who's actually in charge. Don't let the tail wag the dog. So whilst we have some really good ministers, and I have been fortunate with the civil servants that I've worked with, have always been very professional, but some of them are also very good at bending wills. And so what we need to do is make sure that the people who are ultimately accountable, which is ministers, politicians, are the people who actually make the decisions, stick by them and see them through. Thank you.
Raluca.
And thank you. I was also a member of the Public Accounts Committee, and within that term I did the review of the annual report and accounts. I led on the review of the annual report and accounts for 2023, where I made exactly recommendations in this sense. What is very useful, as the other member said, as part of the scrutiny, you also scrutinize the budget, you have a say on what should be and shouldn't be there, and ask responses for that. But also what is very powerful, I feel, in the Public Accounts Committee and the CANG that supervises and does reviews of their own, is the tracker, the recommendations tracker. And that's very important because that pushes further and doesn't let fall through the holes, the recommendations that have either been accepted but not completed, or make sure that the recommendations that are not accepted to have a good reason, or push forward to have those implemented. And working not in silo in departments and with ALOs together, not duplicating the work and having a better memorandum of understanding that is clear and transparent for the public as well. With all those terms, you're able to hold better the government to account.
So thank you for all your questions, and thank you to the candidates for their answers. I'm sorry we didn't get around to Peter's, who left a written question. Perhaps you could nobble some of the candidates before they leave the room. Before we go, each candidate would like to have a final word, and first, it's Louise Dublé.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed some of the questions that we've had tonight. It's been a really good range. And thank you to everyone who had the courage to put their hand up and ask a question, because I know that's not always easy. If you've got further questions that you haven't managed to ask us, please do get in touch. Everyone's got my manifesto on their seats, and my details are there. And I'm trying to get round to as many homes as possible as well. I hope that what has come through tonight is that I have a compassionate approach, but also a rigorous, evidence-based approach to all the work that I do. I don't spend money without having the evidence in place to make sure that the policy or the legislation attached to that money is going to make a tangible difference to islanders' lives and to do some good in islanders' lives. And I have achieved things on a wider scale and also more quietly in the community. And I would like to continue doing that. I would love to continue working hard for you. So please do consider giving me one of your votes for deputy. Thank you.
Malcolm Ferry.
Thank you. Well, I don't know about you, but I've really enjoyed tonight. Maybe we all need to get out a bit more. But what I can only compare this to 2022. And what I found is the questions tonight have been far more incisive, far more considered than perhaps they were last time. Or maybe it was just more of a blur last time, and perhaps I'm hopefully a little bit more well-informed than I was in 2022. If you look at the strapline on my leaflet, it says, working for the parish, working for Jersey. Parish comes first for me. I've demonstrated that over the last 4 years by attending your parish meetings, by being your voice in the assembly. If you give me your sacred vote again this time, I pledge and promise to continue that great work for the next 4 years. I think really that I don't need my full time. That's all I need to say. Thank you very much.
Reluca.
Thank you. I think this election comes ultimately to trust, priorities, and whether the public can trust that Jersey is really working for the ordinary public. Too many people, as we heard, are struggling with the cost of living, with the young people staying on the island, and all those needs to be addressed in the more sustainable way. Over the last 4 years, I've been very approachable. I had drop-in sessions regularly. I've been in touch with parishioners on all sorts of matters. And I hope you'll always know that my door is always open, and parishioners come first, public. I put people first in everything I do. And as well, on my leaflet and manifesto, you can see that it says dedicated, determined, delivering. And that's what I did in the last 4 years, and that's what I want to continue to do. And hopefully you'll be able to give me your trust with the vote on 7th of June and to reform Jersey. Thank you.
Chris Leck.
Well, hopefully I've convinced you that I'm not a boring accountant after all, but someone who is ready, willing, able to be an energetic deputy looking after you in the State's Assembly. Years of working in the public and private sector has taught me that there's nothing more exciting in life than balancing the books. But we have to have income exceeding expenditure, otherwise we will be not happy and we will be endlessly counting the pennies. The world's changing fast, isn't it? Thanks to 3 geriatrics in the US, Russia, and Israel. But there's a serious point here. Food, heating, interest, and other costs will rise in Jersey. The State's Assembly needs to be a mean, clean, running machine with no room for passengers. It shouldn't aspire to be a Rolls-Royce, but rather a good economic Ford Fiesta. What we need is a strong, competitive, efficient government that's able and not afraid to cut public expenditure, has the skills to grow the economy and tackles the cost of living head on. I would be most grateful if you would vote for me on the 7th of June. Thank you very much for being here.
Robert Parker.
No, thank you very much for being here this evening. And yes, what can I say? I think that, thinking about something like football, the person who's standing up in the basically, watching the game is the perfect footballer. They can work out all the things. The difference is when you're actually, could they play the game? How would they make a difference in making something happen? And I think when you're looking at us and who should basically be representing you to basically make changes, it is the abilities that we can have and we can bring to the job. Because when you're dealing with teams and you're dealing with civil servants, it's not a case of the politician telling the civil servant, this is what you're going to do. In management, what you try to do is to get the person who's going to do it for you to actually take ownership. So what you do is you discuss it, you get people on board, they have real commitment to what's happening, and then you get results. If you just tell people to do things, you may as well micromanage them. So actually managing and dealing with stuff in a professional manner is something I feel has been lacking in the States. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for coming this evening. If you'd like to get in touch with any election candidates, there's leaflets on your chairs. Also, you should have either received or be receiving this at home fairly soon. That's got all the contact details. Or you could go to the vote.je website. If you applied for a postal vote, your ballot papers need to be with the judicial graph by 12 noon on Sunday the 7th of June. And you can vote early at St Paul's Centre in St Helier from the 26th of May to the 1st of June. On election day, polling stations are open from 8 till 8. If you're voting on election day, please take photo ID with you. And I know in this parish you've got 3 different polling stations, and this leaflet is just on the table as you leave. It will show you which polling station is the right one for your address. And the parish has told me that they will be getting in touch, writing to you all to tell you which is your area. And I think Robert wants to say a few words of thanks.
I'd like to thank everybody who's been involved in this evening and probably listening to us all twittering on for far too long. So thank you very much indeed for giving up your Tuesday evening. So a very, very sincere thanks from us all. Thank you.
Can I add a final thanks to our moderator, Kathy Keir, who's been fantastic tonight, neutral and effective. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much for coming, and good night.